snap. Williams fakes to give to Robinson, dumps it off to Quinn on a tight end screen, stays on his feet 30, up to the 20, cuts out 15, to the 10, makes another man miss, and he tripped into the end zone before a touchdown.
We are Southern Illinois.
Chest high snap, give to Chapman, rushes through left below the numbers 20, he's to the 10, he's to the 5, and he's in! Time for an end zone! Chandler Chapman!
It's time for Saluki football. Now, here is the voice of the Salukis, Luke Martin.
It was a great homecoming week in Carbondale, and now it's time for the closing stretch of the Valley regular season. It's hard to believe that we are just inching closer to the month of November, which is where those are the games to remember. With the coach Pat Poore alongside Mike Trude, I am Luke Martin, your Saluki radio crew, here with your Saluki football video podcast. Coming out here on Thursday, a little bit of a day later, but we have Jody Wright join us. We want to make sure that we fit into his schedule this week. His conversation will be coming up here in a matter of moments as we preview Murray State and Southern Illinois on Saturday. But first things first, as we always do, it's time to recap the game previously, and it was a win for SIU on Saturday against UNI. And Mike, Pat, it was a great day. I mean, so many former players back. I've been around a lot of homecoming games in my career too. I know both of you have here and elsewhere. But it was just really a unique feeling to see so many former players that were really current players that were just recently here that were back, and then, of course, so many throughout the years come back and get treated with a really good football game on Saturday, Coach Poore.
Yeah, like I told you guys pregame, just a awesome vibe. I mean, what homecoming is about from that standpoint, and really an indication of what type of people have played here, and that they take pride in coming back and catching up and all that. And I mean, just, you know, first guy walking through the tailgate, first guy sees old Rag, you know, old JD Check, and you know, got caught up with him, and just a bunch of dudes that, like I said, just you almost wish it's like, hey, Luke, I'm not going to be down there. I'm going to hang out here for a lot longer and catch up with a bunch of dudes. But yeah, it was that was awesome, and just and a good environment. You know, I mean, we go to a lot of places. I've been to a lot of places, and that's impressive when you turn the corner up there, you know, onto 51, and the lots are full, and you know, jambalaya's cooking, and people are having a good time and catching up with people, and yeah, it was awesome.
And then there were just so many other events too. Of course, the Hall of Fame on Friday, which two Saluki football players went into, with Fabre Collins and Jeremy Chin. And then Saturday, which we talked about multiple times too, True, the Itchy Jones Celebration of Life. I know you were able to go over and take that in. There are just a lot of first-class events on the weekend that brought back so many familiar faces.
Yeah, it was Itchy's Celebration of Life was just mind-blowing to me. Guys that played in the 60s, 70s, 80s, every decade was pretty much represented at the celebration. There were 6 different speakers. Mike Reese was the MC, and he was one of them, and each one gave their perspective of their time as a Saluki, and then what Itchy meant to them, not just as a player, but as a human being. And Itchy's greatest quality of all was probably the fact that he was one of the best human beings you would ever meet in your life, besides being a phenomenal baseball coach.
And great to see guys like Derek Shelton back.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, there's
Steve
Dewey,
Finley,
so many other. I mean, it was just. I mean, I think everyone knew the impact that Itchy had, but that day to see, and I didn't get a chance to go over and see it. I was able to watch the ceremony, which if you haven't seen it, it's on SIU Saluki Athletics on the Facebook page. We also upload it to our YouTube page. So wherever you get our podcast, video podcast, just search the Itchy Jones Celebration of Life. It will be there. It's no doubt worth the time.
The other thing that was really neat was just seeing the Salukis like Jeremy Chin, actually the pride they had in seeing the guys that were playing now for the Dogs have success. I mean, on the punt return, I mean, Jeremy Chin, I mean, he's playing in NFL games every Sunday. He's down there going bananas in the end zone, you know. It's just, that was awesome to see.
And it's so huge for the current team to be able to see that guys, even like you say, that are on the biggest stage of them all right now, and Jeremy Chin. And Jeremy even talked about in his Hall of Fame interview, which is archived in the same spot where you get our stuff, is he's like, hey, like, yeah, I know it's great for those guys to interact with me this weekend, but you know what? It's important for me.
Yeah, and they're on a bye week. I mean, it's like
the timing of it could not have worked out any better. And, of course, for the team, 31-17 win. Let's start with really the major positives, and that was the first half, guys. It was 24-0. Both sides of the ball were humming. I think, first and foremost, one side that's been beaten up a lot in recent weeks has no doubt been the defense, and at times deservingly so with the numbers that have happened, the points that's been allowed. But from guys like Vinny Pierre, who I think arguably had his best game, to so many others, the defensive line getting pushed. You went from your worst tackling grade of the season on PFF, which was about 38% last week against North Dakota, to your best at 83%. The defense answered the call on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely, and which leads me to think that neither one is the true accurate point of this team. They weren't 38% bad, and they're not 83% good all the time, but the high and the low were right there in those 2 weeks. And I don't know how many times we said it in the North Dakota game, this team is just not making tackles. And that played a huge factor in, number one, getting behind 28-0 at halftime and really not having a chance to come back in that football game. And then last week in getting 3 and outs. Southern got a ton of 3 and outs in both halves, but really accentuated in the first half when they piled on those 24 points before Northern Iowa could even get on the scoreboard.
Yeah, I was impressed. The Salukis unleashed, ran that first drive. I mean, we came out and kind of said how this game's going to get played. I mean, we did it on the ground. We ran the ball really well right out the gate. And then I was impressed with just the fact that, kind of like we talked about last week, we impacted their offense with, good interior line push and safety play and tackling, like you alluded to, and just seemed like we were just on another layer of how we played defense going into a game. That's what we should have done.
Yeah, it's a shame that you had to prove it from the previous week instead of just being that consistent. And I think Peyton Reeves said it best in your interview with him on Monday or Tuesday, that the consistency the rest of the year is how they want to play that Northern Iowa scheme that they did, to be disruptive, to get into the backfield, to not have to call on blitzes all the time. And I think Nick said it was their fewest blitz package of the year, and they still got 4 sacks in the game and should have had the 5th if Presto's wasn't nullified by that defensive penalty. So it was a great job defensively, and I think for 53 minutes of the game, their final 2 touchdowns kind of it hurt in the impression overall of the game, but that notwithstanding, those were with second and third string guys in the ball game as well. That number 1 to number 2 D was solid all game long.
6 3 and outs is what SIU had on Saturday, which was just a remarkable number for the Saluki defense. And, kind of just continuing that mark, the defense had a great start to the game, but, man, I wanted to start with them because they no doubt deserve it. And Jeremiah McClendon, I mean, what a day he had for the Salukis. I'm really happy for Jay Black, as the guys call him on the team. His final stat line in that game only had 5 tackles, but a little bit of everything. He had the sack, he had the interception, he had 2 key pass breakups on the day. He has played at an extremely high level from the start of the year, and I don't think there's any question he is one of the most impactful defensive players in the league as a whole.
Yeah, and we saw in the North Dakota State game where he had to handle Bryce, and not many people in the FCS or anywhere can handle that wide receiver. And the passes that he did catch were perfect passes, and there was nothing that Jay Black could have done. Peyton was on point that day with the passes, and Jay Black couldn't have played that receiver any better than he did. I think he is definitely one of the best, if not the best, cover receiver in the Valley this year.
Yeah, and I like the trust that they've built with him. He did a lot of things in that game. They blitzed him from the corner spot. Hadn't seen that all year. They put him in good positions to be successful, as opposed to just being out there on Jay Black Island and like, hey, feast or famine.
No question. And Jay Black and Vinny Pierre led the team in tackles with Chris Presto. Man, so great to see Chris Presto back. Many key things. I mean, him being gone, no doubt, played a major impact against North Dakota, but you could just feel his presence and how big he is to have back out there for the Saluki defense. Well, flipping it to the offense, it isn't like the offense did not have a bad day at the office either. I mean, guys, you look at DJ Williams in the first half, 13 of 15, 2 touchdowns, 159 yards. DJ, you kind of talked about it with Coach Hill after the game, Mike. It wasn't like it was his overwhelmingly best performance and put the cape on and took everybody with him, but it was just so workmanlike and so efficient from the start.
That's what I was impressed with. DJ thinks that sometimes he has to step up more than others, and I think he showed Saturday that if you follow the game plan and just execute along with the 10 other guys that you're executing with, you don't have to be Superman. He ended up 19 for 23, and at least 2 of them, and maybe a third, was to avoid a sack. We know there was one drop ball that probably should have been caught. He should have been 20 for 23. But he played just a really intelligent game, ran it when he needed to, made good reads on the RPOs. One time didn't, but that's going to happen in a game. As well as Nick said, you can't play a perfect game. Nobody's ever going to play for a perfect game, but he was just so solid. And if he stays that course the rest of the year, he doesn't have to be Superman.
Yeah, and I've talked about DJ all year long, how he's playing the position. I mean, distributing the ball, we had, 11 different guys catch pass. And, and like you said, Mike, just how he's running the offense and putting him in positions to be successful, those critical situations where it's like, oh boy, yeah, you need to put the cape on right here, and like I said, that was impressive, just the way our offense operated in terms of the balance of run to pass. The guys who are supposed to be making plays are making plays, and that's always a huge benefit to the quarterback too. Is just that trust. It's like, hey, I can get the ball to a bunch of different guys. I mean, there's a completion out there. That was what we used to always say. Hey, it's on you. There's a completion out there. You just got to find it.
There were 11 players that were targeted in the game. 10 different Salukis had a reception. There were 20 receptions in the game. So, I mean, think about that to go around. That's a pretty well-balanced number throughout the game offensively. The rushing attack, Ed Robinson was our player of the game who we talked to afterwards, but could have very easily gone to his teammate, Chandler Chapman, who averaged 13.5 yards per rush on Saturday, 6 carries, 81 yards, another touchdown. Again, I hate to just be rinse and repeat when we talk about a guy like Chandler Chapman, because each week I keep saying he is a guy, as each week goes by, gaining confidence in every game. And, man, he is going to be an important asset to this Saluki team and towards of running the football the rest of the year.
Yeah, the thing that I've noticed is the combination of there's been some yards after contact runs that have been impressive, and then there's also been from an up front stance, O-line wise, we've had some rips. I mean, he's not getting touched till he gets second level, and that points to development and learning how to function within the offense in the run game. When you got to make a play, you got to break a tackle. You got to make a guy miss, and you're really starting to see that with not just him, but 2 or 3 of those guys they're all starting to kind of look a little bit alike.
Yeah, Chandler and Eddie and DJ, I believe, are all past last year's rushing totals. I think it was 281 or very close to that a year ago, and all 3 are above that. And LeSean is close to 200 now, and he had to sit out 2 full games, almost 3 games, because he didn't get many carries in the game last week, and he's almost at 200 yards. So that just shows how much better that the rushing attack has been this year. The continuity of the offensive line is so critical to this group. And yes, Blaine is in there while Colion is nursing that knee, but Colion may be back before the end of the year, which could put that group together again as it can be. And it's just been almost injury-free, but working together, taking those reps together, snap after snap after snap in practice. In a game, it just becomes second nature, and those backs know where you're going to be, where that hole's going to be. Where if you're switching all the time, guys have different technique, and yes, you're taught the same technique, but everybody doesn't do it the same. But if you've got the same 5 guys all the time, you know what they're doing and when they're doing it.
And how that complements each phase of that. You know, in turn, I've talked about it, how tough our offense is to prepare for from a defensive standpoint. You know, do you take DJ Williams away? You know, well, now you got 2-3 running backs that you got to account for them, and then you've got the run game phase of spitting the ball out on the edges, and it's really cool to see that all in sync, because it is, when it gets rolling, it's
fun to watch.
Tough. Yeah, it's fun to watch, and it's tough to defend.
281 yards was that mark last year, trued by Jerry and Parker, who was a leading rusher. And now on the year, DJ's nearing 500 yards, 479 on the year. Chandler Chapman, 396, and Ed Robinson, 289. So all 3 of those guys are past it. And to be quite honest with you, LaShawn Lesser is healthy. He's probably over that mark as well right now, sitting at 194 on the season. Well, look, overwhelmingly, we're going to get to the positive part of special teams in a moment, because we know one guy's been waiting for that positivity for so long with the punt return. But no doubt the glaring thing on Saturday, what really kind of is why I feel for Coach Frame this week, because that was a game when you accomplished something for the first time in almost 20 years in program history, and you want that to be the overwhelming note. And it is a positive note for no question. It's why Tay Mario was named the Special Teams Player of the Week. But the punt blocks, no doubt, those led to 10 of the 17 points for you and I on Saturday. I'm sure a mixture of things when you went back and watched them, Coach Poor, but just those are areas that have to get cleaned up.
Yeah, you always talk about the 3 phases, the third phase being special teams, and you want to come out on the winning side of that in terms of impactful plays. And, there's not a lot of times when you look at a game and somebody blocks a kick that they aren't on the winning side of it, let alone 2. And, hey, flowers to our defense, because that was a win on that first block, holding them to a field goal. And but some of that, again, if you really look at it, it wasn't schematic. We were offsetting Paul and kicking away from a short side. And I think you even on air said the first punt, boy, they almost got that one.
Yes.
And that's when in my head I was like, yeah, they did. And Paul kind of just, hey, when you're in that offset directional punt scheme, you got to catch it and kick it and not worry about hitting a bomb. And I thought he kind of hung on to that one. The second one, they kind of schemed us up on. They brought a guy from off the ball and right up to shoot. And again, so much of that is timing, snap to kick times, and I know, Frame, that, that's what you do as a special teams guy. You're out there with that watch all the time, because that's the big part of it. It's even like field goals blocks. A lot of times it's, from the naked eye, it looks like, ooh, they almost got that. And then you go back and watch it on film, it's like it's not even close. But it's a timing factor of snap, hold, kick. Ball's got to be up in X amount of time for your protections to hold up.
I think Chris Presto even said that he probably should have changed the call on the second punt that got blocked. He did see something, but he thought that what they had called would work. And he said, looking back on it, he probably should have changed it to where that guy was not going to be able to come through, but they thought they had it in the scheme that he had called. So.
Yeah, because there is, today's punt game, you guys see it. There's all kinds of different formations.
Yeah.
You got, it's almost like an offensive playbook in itself. And there is a guy, one of those up backs back there, that's identifying the numbers and the counts and where we're sliding the protection and who's got who and who we're turning loose. And that's why when you see Paul offset behind almost the tackle and, you're directionally snapping, that's that timing factor. It's like that guy can't get there off that short edge if the punter's in that alignment. It's not old school, hey, just, we used to call it pro punt,
Yeah.
You got 2 tight ends and 3 up backs, and you just snap it back there and kick it. And because a lot of times that used to be how many guys are actually covering the kick, and that's why you see today all that stuff, different formations and motions, is to get more people down the field to cover the kick.
Well, when you think of the momentum that the Salukis are building, they get the football back up 24-0 with, I think, all 3 timeouts there at the end of the first half, and you feel like, all right, there's a chance you could maybe put up another score or at least milk it down where you're up 24-0. Obviously, the block punt, the defense gained a tremendous stand. I don't think we touched up on that enough on the air post-game with Coach Hill of how big that was. But that's where, again, the momentum, those late points, no doubt kind of shifted in that way. That's where, when you think of just the bigger picture, look, you need to win the games. And it's just like Saturday at Murray State. In a way, are there style points? Not necessarily. You just need to win those games. But also, we all know when you come off 2 games against the upper tier that they weren't one-possession games. Those scores were a little lopsided. In these games where you're the heavy favorite, you want to try to win that game 42-3, get in that area versus 31-17 as it was the final. Was it that close? No, the game was never that close. But at the same standpoint, a lot of committee members, a lot of those folks who make those decisions do look at your score. And that is the one thing that just kind of twists you a little bit uncomfortably with how Saturday's game ended.
I was so glad to hear Nick say that like, hey, it's never going to be perfect. But from a coaching standpoint, expectations, your culture, you're striving for perfection. And that's why plays like the block punt, we had talked all week, hey, we can't let these guys breathe. We can't give them that one play that all of a sudden, bang, that was it. That got them going. And, from that standpoint, that's what you're looking at as opposed to the actual score or anything like that. It's like, hey, we want to be playing our best football in all 3 phases going into November to make everything we want to happen come to fruition.
That's why that defensive stand after
huge.
that first block punt, they went 3 plays negative 2 yards. I mean, they didn't gain positive yardage, and there were no penalties. They just couldn't get a yard positively, had to settle for the long field goal or medium long field goal, and that was it. And I think Murray thought this is our shot to at least get within 3 decent scores. 24-7 looks a lot better than 24-3.
Touchdown.
Yeah, anything. And they didn't, and hats off to the D, and then they come back out second half, 3 and out, then they run a punt back.
Well, not to really get into the nitty-gritty of how we do and prepare for games, but there's always what we call spotting boards in the business that I make out to help us be able to notify guys and also notify different stats in the game. I think I'm going to have Mike True do the honor this week on my spot board to delete the last punt return for a touchdown for the Salukis. It's been on my board ever since we have done games with each other. Of course, Craig Turner was the last one to do it. Yes, Coach Hill. Craig Turner, last one to do it. Wasn't against Delaware, by the way, as much as he would have liked him. We jokingly were ribbing each other about that this week. But 2006 against Western Kentucky, Trude is still full of crap because he said he would jump out of the window when that would happen. He didn't jump out the window.
Was not big enough,
Hey,
and I couldn't climb up there without ruining your equipment.
I told Luke I had a vision when that thing first started that, like, if I could have flipped positions with it and you'd been down on the field, you would have got on film in a college football game because you'd have been running down the sideline, run, Forrest, run, go score, go score, go score.
Oh, it was a tremendous play, 81-yard punt return. What was really kind of, I guess, humorous about it, outside of just us waiting for it for years on years on years, is Tay almost looked like he was in slow motion. I mean, he of course waited for the blocker, waited for that wall. Now, once that wall was built and he got through, I mean, it was just Pettinger, the punter, that was in front of his way. And no offense to Pettinger if he's listening to this, but there was no way you were going to catch up to Tay. Mario, but it never felt like he even got to the top gear.
No,
which you are, and that even just tells you like the type of talent that dude has in terms of his speed.
But we talk about the running backs being patient. He was patient. He didn't just grab the ball and go, because the reason that he returns punts, he's incredibly fast. One of the fastest guys on the team, obviously, and because that's usually it's a long distance you have to go. But he played this one perfectly. He let the block set up for a second, and then he just realized, if I go too fast, I'm going to outrun my blocking, and then there's going to be some people there. So he let it develop, and again, never got out of third gear. It was first, second, third, and then when he saw the punter, you couldn't see his face, but you could almost sense that there was a little smirk, because all he had to do was do one little juke and head to the corner, and he was by that punter going half speed to get to the end zone. And it never looked like he exerted himself the entire play.
And before you start, Coach Poor, I want to give Tay so much credit about what happened on the previous punt return that he had. He fumbled it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was very easily a moment where you can get in your own feelings, get in your own emotions. What he did was he responded and started off the half and ended up being the only score offensively for Southern in the second half.
Well, and having been back there and coached punt returners, in hindsight, we should almost seen it coming, because the first goal back there is to catch the punt and get us a first down, get 8 yards, get 9 yards. And the one that he fumbled on, he did a nice job of splitting the gunners, and it was close. And then, obviously, put the ball on the ground late, got it back, but the one that went for a touchdown was eerily similar. He great job of blocking the gunners up. He got them split, and then when he got to the punter that was looking like a cow looking at a new gate at that point, it was over. Gone City Johnson.
Any more? You have any more that you can use? No. But it was a tremendous effort by Tay, and now finally I can update that on my board, but it'll just be last week. Check it off. So
and it's so much easier to remember now.
Yeah.
It was just a week ago.
Yes, it was just a week ago.
Not 19
known as
years ago.
the Trude return for a touchdown.
And the sad or the good thing was, I watched Craig Turner return that punt and many kickoffs. Craig Turner was an unbelievable return
Electric.
man. Oh my gosh, he didn't need much of anything, and he was just gone.
No, his was 83. So Tay, if you only 81, but still remarkable return for a score, and congratulations to Tay, and an awesome moment for him and the team. And I still think who deserves the most credit is that Reese family jambalaya feeding up True. I think that was the good vibe charm for them.
Yeah, but I kept hearing about shrimp. There was no shrimp in that jambalaya, but it was
Whatever it was.
Amazingly good. And Peyton said that it had a little kick to it. It did have a little kick to it, and I added to the kick as well, because I had my own little. They had bottles of hot sauce, and I said, where's the hottest one? And they said this one, and I poured it on.
You are a big fan of hot,
I love
the
spicy
hottest
foods.
the hottest of hot sauces. Mike Trude loves them. man.
Guarantee.
Yeah, guarantee.
Well, let's welcome on Jody Wright, who's the head coach of Murray State. We were able to catch up with him on Thursday morning before we released this podcast here on Thursday afternoon. And here was our convo with the second-year coach at Murray State, Jody Wright. So great to catch up here on the Saluki Football Podcast with the visiting coach here this weekend. We'll be heading down to homecoming in Murray, Kentucky. I know it'll be a great crowd as Jody Wright welcomes us in his second year at Murray State. Coach Wright, so great to catch up with you. Thanks so much for the time. I'm sure homecoming festivities can always be a little bit nervous for our coach with so many guys coming back, all the other distractions outside of football. But, man, I'm sure there's a lot of great energy there in Murray for this game on Saturday.
Yeah, homecoming's a special place here, which, and I saw it on the schedule. I'm like, why in the world are we scheduling somebody for homecoming that beat us 62-0 last year? We got to be crazy. I probably shouldn't have anything to do with that. But the way the schedule set up, we kind of late in the year, and then we only have 5 home games this year, but it's tough some days now finding some college teams to play homecoming. But I got so much respect for Coach Hill, one of the best coaches I think in all levels of football, and SIU. What a great program! I remember watching it when I was younger, and seeing all the good players come through there. Great tradition, and Murray's had a great tradition, and we're trying to slowly get back to some of the brighter days around here with football.
Coach Wright, you've seen football at the highest of all levels, from professionally in the SEC. You're now in your second year in the Missouri Valley Football Conference. I know, as you said, you're familiar with it. You've always known about the Valley. But man, the quarterback play this year in the league has been extremely high. We know the ranked teams week in, week out. Just now in the midst of year two, now that you've been in it, I mean, how would you describe the level of football in this league compared to the levels of football you've been a part of?
I think there's no comparison. I mean, it is, to me, I told somebody the other day, I said, it's like if you took the top 5 teams in the SEC and the top 5 teams in the Big Ten and put them in a conference, because literally I think, North Dakota State, South Dakota State, North Dakota, Southern Illinois, Youngstown State, even South Dakota, I think every one of those are national championship contenders, in my opinion. All definitely playoff teams, and all will have a chance to beat anybody any day and win a national championship, in my opinion.
Yeah, Coach, talking about the Valley, and you haven't been in the SEC, going into a build like you are, you've been in at Murray, is within the conference. If you feel like you can win the conference, you're going to be in that national. Is that kind of been your vision of what you're trying to get done at Murray? Is like, hey, let's get in that, let's be relevant, let's be in that tier.
It is, and we've had to spin it as a positive. It's I tell guys all the time, hey, even recruiting, we're in a rebuild, and we signed about 60 true freshmen, and just tell them, hey, this is the best conference in football, and you get to go showcase. And we're not right now competing at the top of it, but hopefully we're going to get there one day, and we feel like we're on some good steps to get there. But it's definitely like what you would sell at now everybody in the SEC and Big Ten's probably got a little revenue shared money, and back in years past maybe your Vanderbilts or Northwesterns were kind of at the bottom tier, but they all have a little money now to compete. But it was very similar, and I was fortunate enough to be at Alabama, some of the top tier in the SEC, and Mississippi State kind of when we were struggling in a rebuild. But that brand was very strong. SEC recruiting, I'm sure, just like in the Big Ten. So, it's definitely this conference. It is, I think our conference is, in my opinion, is I'm watching some Conference USA and Sun Belt teams, and I think the top teams in our conference would beat the top teams in that conference any day of the week. So,
yeah, talking about that, Coach, and your journey through the coaching profession. You've been on the professional side of it. You've been, top of the SEC national championship caliber teams and been a part of putting those rosters together. Today's football, and where you're at Murray, kind of talk to us a little bit about, just like your mindset to put your spin on it and do it your way. The portal, the transformational recruiting of freshmen, how big a bag you got there compared to everybody else. I mean, what's that been like for you, again, being in a build at a new place?
Yeah. I think, everybody, I think the number one thing you got to do is, hopefully evaluate guys that are a good fit in your program. And, I think trying to get guys that are competitive, love football, because one thing about this conference, a lot of guys that play on Saturday really love football, and they're smart, they're tough, they're dependable type guys. And for whatever reason, they were either overlooked or maybe didn't sign bigger. And probably a lot of people, those bigger schools, wish they had them on their team. And but it is definitely a management, because I know all the head coaches are sitting there saying, man, just like last year, Southern Illinois, and probably because they played so good on us, we were playing a lot of their highlight tapes. But I think lost the receiver to Oklahoma and some different deals, and that's the tough part. And and you're not angry at the young men if they get a great opportunity.
Yeah,
I think you've got to be honest with them, and hopefully they know the market and are honest with themselves. And, I tell them all the time, I said, hey, guys, I wish I was the head coach at SEC Big Ten school. Yeah, but we didn't win a game. So I know the coaching market. I'm not going to the coaching portal. It's like you got to be honest with them and say things. Because, you say, hey, guys, if you're a dominant player in this conference, guess what? You can play probably the highest level of football in college, and will probably play on Sunday if you're a dominating all conference player in this league. And that's what history says. And when you got to be, I think just having honest, blunt conversations with guys about that. But it's definitely a challenge. And I felt like we were able to get a lot really good high school players because of maybe they would have signed bigger because of the portal. And I'm sure coming off the season we were last year, we probably weren't the most attractive team for a lot of portal guys coming down. So we were trying to, build up, and I felt like, and when I got here, getting hired late, of course, DJ was here, and I'd seen him on tape, and then I saw where he went the portal. This is right after he got hired. So, well, the quarterback was pretty good, but he left, left it. And a lot of guys, and anytime you have a coaching change, turnover, or maybe the season's not going the way, that's going to happen, especially your better players. And they'd had some, and Shug Walker, who's a great linebacker, and people around Murray State can't say enough good things about either one of those guys, and that's what you want in your program, but. It's definitely a management whenever you take something over and you're kind of trying to say, hey, can I get this a quick fix, or try to lay some foundation. And we felt like we kind of needed to reset and kind of get a foundation because we were so late in the portal and just didn't feel like we got guys that compete in this conference. And, I think a lot of the better teams in this conference, it's a lot of homegrown guys. And then you add some guys that, maybe for whatever reason, like I know Jake Perella, his dad coached with him at Cleveland, and, a guy that went to Oregon State and didn't play football to late in high school, so developing. And, SIU's been a great fit for him, and he's a great football player. I wish he was on my team. I was texting with his dad, but that, and kind of find guys like that in the portal that, they've got upside and they got the character and heart to develop it, in the right setting.
Coach Wright, as you were kind of talking about, 54 freshmen on your roster this year. And when you kind of building off of what Coach Poore was asking you, don't necessarily want to describe it as, hey, what's a Jody Wright player? But if you had to describe, like if you're looking for a good DNA makeup of guys that you want to recruit, how would you describe that type of recruit that you're looking for?
Yeah, number one, I think, I want guys that tough, just mental and physical tough guys, and guys that'll compete. And we'd like to have them, some measurable size, but I always say if they don't have elite measurables, they make up with it with elite heart, elite smarts, something right there that kind of overcomes maybe their, the reason they're a 6'1" defensive lineman. If they were 6'4", they might be playing at Ohio State or somewhere, but they've kind of got that heart and motor or whatever it is. But, I think I think especially in this league, and you want guys that are mentally and physically tough, that love football, and that, are smart, tough, dependable guys. You can count on them to do the right stuff, and that they love coming to the building, and they're a joy to be around, and I think anytime you go through hard or rebuild, and I love this team and love the way we've competed this year, and we've had spirited practices, and I think they believe in, where we're going, and we're not there yet, but I told them the only way we're going to get there is working the right way, and I feel like they've bought into that.
Yeah, that, Coach, just hearing you talk about those things and knowing your background, that piece of from the coaching standpoint is being a relationship guy. It's such a vicious cycle because you do a great job with that, recruiting guys that you want, having great relationships built, and then it's like he got too good and you're going to get poached. It's a vicious cycle. And old guys like me, that's kind of why it's like, but you seem like you're still having fun. You enjoy it, love football, and staff wise, you got some great guys with you that obviously you had ties to through previous places.
Yeah, I felt like you said it, Coach. I felt like we got a great staff, and the relationships is what kills you. We're hoping we get to the day where we got some good players that are in there making hard decisions, or somebody's trying to poach them or transfer them. The problem is we ain't had too many of those yet. We feel like hopefully in the future we're getting some of those. I was meeting with a young man yesterday, and we were talking, and he's had a really productive year, and he was a walk-on in the SEC school, and we put him on scholarship, and we just had an honest conversation. I said, man, hey, you have another good year, you'd have 1 year of eligibility, and if there's some life changing money or a great opportunity for you, I'll be the first to help you. And he was like, oh, I appreciate that, Coach. And I said, and I had to be honest with him. I said, no, look, you don't have elite measurables. So, know, you're going to have keep having elite play where people get over, hey, he's not the biggest or not the fat, things like that. So, but we've had a great group, and I'm hoping some of this in college football kind of gets self-corrected with like, coach, before we all knew, hey, you can only sign 25 players a year, and everybody had 63 scholarships at FCS, and everybody had 85. So, you just had to make good evaluations. Well, now, it's just the wild west a little bit. And, I think if everybody just knew, hey, this is the parameters, and everybody could spend this much money or whatever, or if you want to invest in it, but hey, it's eventually going to be capped out, no different than NFL. I tell people all the time, like, the Chiefs can pay Patrick Mahomes $100 million, but they only got $100 million for the rest of the team every year. So you got to basically decide how you want to spend your money. So it's I do think it's going to be better. I hear people all the time, well, the toothpaste is out of the tube with college football, which it is, but I at least think they've cleaned up some of the toothpaste and maybe got a little bit back in the tube, but hopefully, we'll see some positive changes because, I think there's a fine line in the middle that hopefully, the players and coaches and everybody can meet, because I know the players don't want to pay taxes on all this stuff and revenue sharing. And I always tell them, I said, guys, it's nice for Alabama and Ohio State and schools that's got money, but there's not many FCS schools that are bankrolling. I don't think Elon Musk is giving anybody $1 billion trying to build a football program right now in FCS. But.
Well, and the common person not understanding the difference between NIL and collective, and where those bags are really at and what you have access to is a huge part of it that hopefully gets cleaned up a little bit too.
Yeah, that's been, I think that area, and, I remember even last year I could tell kids, they, oh, coach, this school offered you this or that. I said, well, I can tell you, I could make up some collective name and say, hey, we're offered you this Murray State, whatever collectives offered you $1 million, and you get here, that's not the truth. It's like, and all they can do is file bankruptcy, I guess. But
you can't be a used car salesman anymore.
Oh, and and I just told kids, hey, we don't have it, so we got scholarships or whatever, and but it's been great, and I think there's still enough young men out there that are appreciative of a great opportunity to get a great education and play a great brand of football in the Missouri Valley and things like that.
Coach, as we've discussed already multiple times within your interview, I mean, man, your schedule from the start to this year, I mean, you have gone up against virtually every team every week you played, and excluding just the 2 FBS games you've had, those teams are right in the hunt, in the thick of getting into the postseason and in playoff football, going all the way back to SELA, Southeastern Louisiana, in your non-conference portion of the schedule. So your team has been battle tested, which is why I think when you look at some of your numbers and you look at your team, especially on the offensive side, your running backs have really had an outstanding year, Coach. And I know those were 2 guys that really stood out on film to Coach Poor as we were preparing this week. Northington and Washington, just the confidence you have in those 2 guys. And, man, whenever you go 20 personnel, that tells you got a lot of confidence in those 2 men.
Yeah, Juwan and Jordan both really solid backs. Was really excited. When I got hired here and saw Juwan on the roster, and he's done a good job. He's a bigger back. Jordan's had some production. He was a guy we actually recruited when I was at South Carolina, and he had some Georgia Tech to UAB offers, and I called him when I first got hired because we only had about a week before high school signing day. So I said, well, he may still think I'm coaching at South Carolina. He'll probably answer the phone. So it's probably why he did. But luckily, because of the transfer portal, he was a little bit, probably fell through the cracks with some things. And so we were able to get him. He got hurt last year with a collarbone injury, so we didn't have him after 4 games, but had a great year this year. And, really excited about all our backs, but, we've had some offensive line woes. And last week, I think we had 3 true freshmen playing at center and the guards. So it's been, they probably hadn't had some of the holes we would like to at times. But, they've made some runs and broke some tackles. And I told them, hey, that's part of being a good running back. It's always not going to be blocked right. And sometimes you got to make an elite cut or have elite vision and keep your legs moving. But they're definitely some solid backs for this conference, and so we're gonna have hopefully be able to get them some yards. Y'all's linebackers and defense is just tough though, so
That's good. That's good coaching.
Fight.
That's good coaching, Coach. If you had a third back, you might come out in a wishbone going, "The Lord on us, just get them all on the field. We got to shoot our shot."
I know.
Your receiving crew too. You got some good players there. Coach Williams got those guys going. A lot of production from the two receivers.
Yeah, Coach Williams, he's an old SIU Saluki, so Coach Hill did a great job.
He's a Bammer too.
Yeah, oh yeah. So Coach Hill did a great job, teaching him how to be a good young coach and everything, and his dad and everything. So I'm excited to get Nick but our receivers, we've had Darius Cannon's had a solid season. Lucas DiGiorno, number 12. We got him as a walk-on from Tulane, and of course I put him on scholarship after spring because he was doing really well. But they've both been very productive receivers for us this year. And sometimes we struggled to wish we had a little more time to throw the ball with our offensive line. And I tell people all the time it's tough rebuilding an offensive line with young guys. And I think all throughout college football it's tougher for your down the field throws and your traditional 6-step protections, because I think defensive linemen are getting bigger, quicker, and stronger, and it's not as many athletic, tough offensive linemen out there, so everybody's always looking at it. I think I tell people all the time, and no different than the NFL and the portal, that there's a premium on the offensive, defensive linemen, the guys that can't be blocked, and the guys that can block the ones that usually aren't. Nobody else can block. So
that old question. The reason you're 3-4 is because you couldn't find that one D end the 4-down team.
Yeah. I think right now we're an 0-4 defense. We can't find any of the
Coach, right? When you do look at just the team in general, and we can focus on that defensive side here, and we really appreciate your time as always. We know your time is limited. It's just, I know the ending to last year was a tough ending for you guys, but then you go in, you want to find your team, your makeup, and you've said you love the competition that your group has had in practice. Defensively, you look at PFF. I know PFF is not the end-all be-all, but your analytics are improving as the years going on, and especially in terms of tackling. I think that's probably the biggest area where you've gotten better. What do you contribute that to, and is that accurate? Like, do the analytics add up to what you see every day of improvement on that side of the ball?
Well, yeah, we last year, I don't think we could have tackled any worse, and we practiced it, and I figured out either we were the worst coaches or some guys didn't want to tackle. So I said, well, I'll give us the benefit of the doubt on coaches. We'll try to recruit some better guys, but no, we had to find guys. I think tackling's a mentality, and I hate to say it, I think you can improve some tackling your angles and bending and different things, but it's kind of like I always say, fighting dogs, if they won't bite as a puppy, they probably won't bite when they're an older dog. So if they don't like to tackle or hit anybody in high school, when you get them when they're 19, 20, 21, they're probably not going to want to do it in college. But now you're limited a little bit more how you can do it. So you got to be creative with some drills and tackling bags to, doing different things and just getting bigger and stronger. And I think a lot of ours is freshmen, the speed of the college game, especially our first game or two. And yeah, you had some live scrimmage and fall camp, but it's your other teammate, but just hopefully getting better through the weeks. And that's what we've challenged them to do. And like I said, I don't know if we could have got any worse from last year. We were trending better, but and I do give our guys credit, man. They've come to work every week, and we've coached them even harder, and I think they are improving in those areas.
How big of a part has Dylan Rousey been in that? And I mean, look, the numbers stand out, of course, when he's almost got already 100 tackles on the year, but he's a guy you're going to see him get in that box. He's going to play against the running game too. It's not just he's making saving tackles on the back end of your defense, just the guy you coach each and every day, the personality he is, and how big of a role he plays for your defense, Coach.
Yeah, Dylan is with last December, he had a lot of production at Itawamba Junior College and didn't have any offers hardly. And one of our guys on staff, our DFO last year, had been on Etowamba's staff and it helped recruit the young man. And his dad was a coach and just talking about what a great young man he was. And I'm like, well, why does he have any offers? So I said, his tape says he's a good player. And so meeting him and we were fortunate enough to literally beat nobody on him. And you know, they were like, well, do we have to give this guy a full scholarship? We probably get him a half because he ain't got nothing else. I was like, no, that's what I think he is. We're going to give it to him. And he's played, you know, he finds a way to get them down, you know, and whether he's got to jump on their back, wrap around the waist, or he'll come up and hit you too. But, you know, he's just one of those guys that you feel good at safety because, like I said, he'll come down the box. He's very instinctive, takes good angles, and just, you know, everything you want to. You feel a lot better with him back there at safety than knowing he's kind of the last line of defense because he saves some games. Shouldn't say games. He's called some big plays from being made sometimes with being the last line of defense, making some tackles. So, and he's been banged up a few games, but he's played through it with a foot injury. But you know, he's getting back healthy now.
And you've got to have some trust in throwing those true freshmen out there, second level at linebacker. I mean, they're good players, but you know as well as we do, you know, in this league, a true freshman, you know, baptism by fire, but that crew of linebackers, I mean, you can see it on film. They're coming, you know, and that's got to make you feel good that at least you're getting to a point where you're playing good base defense, and now it's like we got to be better in situations and that type of thing.
You know, it's like last week we give up a deep post in the post safety coverage here, going, how does this happen? You know, and it's guys are right there off or knowing the situation and everything. But like you said, like Spencer Kahn, his dad's a co-DC, assistant head coach at Clemson. One of our linebackers had a really good year, and Clayton Ingram. And I tell our guys all the time, I said, this conference, I said, those big offensive linemen in this conference, they're not going to come up to you and say, hey, man, I'm sorry you're a freshman. I'm going to take it easy on you today. I said, they usually get a little more excited and say, all right, man, I'm fixing to take advantage of this freshman. And
they know who they are.
No different. I said, no different than we're looking around and, you know, when you're in the NFL or college, you're always looking for, hey, who's the freshman, who's the rookie, you know, who's been injured, you know, different things. You know, hopefully there's some blood in the water for the Sharks, you know. But you know, they've competed, and you know, there's been a couple times, you know, that you see them, and the moment wasn't too big, but you know, you can see there was
in the headlights a little.
This is college football moment, couple of them early games and everything, and you know, but you know, I will give them credit. They've got back up each week and fought, and you know, and I tell them all the time, you know, we're going to keep getting better and improve, and I try to tell them we get to play against all these great teams, and just like I tell them we get to play a Southern Illinois ranked team that's going to be a playoff team and have a chance to win the national championship, and a lot of these schools, and you know, and the quarterbacks, just like you know, DJ's probably playing as good as anybody in the country, and Youngstown State's quarterback last week, and you know, North Dakota State's, and you know, there's a lot of good quarterbacks. You know, North Dakota's got great running backs and stuff. I mean, there's just so much last 4 games, but you know, hopefully we can play our best football.
Yeah, and Coach Ryan, you said, you know, the conversation going into the year was like, man, how good is the quarterback play going to be in the league? And it's like, Kaminsky, Brumgard, Williams, Peyton, Mason. I mean, you go through it's. I think the league's okay. I think there's good quarterbacks in this league, Coach Ryan.
Well, and from a recruiting standpoint, I've said it to Luke before. You know, you sit down on a Sunday and you know you watch. There's as many quarterbacks in the NFL out of the Missouri Valley as any place. You know, that it's, you know, hey, you got that opportunity every week to exposure wise, you're playing against the best at this level.
I was messing with someone at media day. I was like, golly, did y'all go on the portal? You had a whole season of highlights against our game alone. You know, somebody paid you a lot of money.
Coach Wright,
be up their draft stock. You know?
Yeah, no question. Hey, before we let you go, you know what we love about doing these interviews, and we've said it, you know, week after week, is no doubt the ones that are wearing Saluki maroon want to see the Salukis win on Saturday, and those wearing that Navy blue and gold want to see the Murray State Racers win on Saturday too. But man, it's like the great thing is you guys as coaches are people too. And we get to work with the great one here in Coach Hill. And I know he thinks the world of you in your short time around him. Just your competitors, same thing. You want to win the game, but how would you just describe that relationship you've been able to build with Coach Hill? Look, Murray and Southern, it's a great rivalry in a lot of sports. And I know that's a level of importance for you to make it matter on the football side too.
Yeah. And like you said, we're competitive, and, we'll have conversations, whether it's recruit philosophies or different things, and I think I love to see that Southern always win every game this year besides ours, but it's, I think anything in the profession we can do to help each other and all that. And it's great, and I know sometimes maybe we'll have a carryover game or helping a coach here or there that may have coached for him or coach for me down the road. But a lot of mutual respect for, number one, the way they play, but getting to know Nick over the years and mutual friends and getting to see them at head coaching conferences. You can tell the guys are genuinely good guys and good coaches, and what you hear about in the business. And, he's an A+ in all those categories. It's tough. It's tough when you play guys that you have a lot of respect for, a friendship, but it's still like, when the ball gets down, it's the players versus players. And, it's a healthy competition, and I was saying, Lane Kiffin was messing with Kirby the other day, about his stuff. So I guess, I hope Nick don't make comments about me being too fat for the game. So
it's great.
I've been
great to hear you.
I've been stress eating, but
it's great to hear you talk about that relationship, because I was just telling one of my memories.
Yeah.
We played when we first came to Southern Illinois. We played Murray and Coach Benunzio, Crazy Joe.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we set an NCAA record for personal fouls in a football game that first year. It was a slobber knocking, haymaker throwing big time game.
There's still some legendary stories in Murray, Kentucky with Panunzio. So if these walls can talk in this office, I'm for sure to say but I worked with him in Alabama, and man, he's awesome, and everybody here still loves him, and he's coaching with the Eagles now, so really, really excited about him. But that's one thing I like to talk about, all the head coaches in this league. And I think it's a little bit like the SEC and Big Ten's. One reason it makes it so strong, because there are so many good coaches, and I think there's a lot of pride in that. And I coached I think I'm the voting member for the AFCA coaches poll, and I had, I think, 7 all 6 teams in Missouri Valley, even I had SIU, all of them in the top 10 this week, because I think they're one of the top 10 teams in the country. And, I think you watch their film, it says that. And, sure, some of those voters are probably, well, this team's undefeated. How you got this team with 2 or 3 losses ahead of them? Well, I think we're trying to pick the 10 best teams, and that's who I'm going to vote for. But it's been, I think, I appreciate all the coaches in this league. They've all been great to me and encouraging, and they kind of know the rebuild we're going through, and some of them had to do it at certain places and everything. So they've been very appreciative. And some, just like Nick last year, they probably could have beat us 100-0, and he was classy and didn't. But it's they've been nothing but first class.
Big thanks to Coach Wright taking time to join us here this week as we get ready for the game on Saturday. And look, it's no secret, this has been a Murray State team this year, Mike and Pat, that they've really struggled. Coach Wright, year 2 at Murray State. I mean, his pedigree, we talked about it. I mean, this is a pedigree that cannot be questioned. He has coached with the best of the best in college football. You know what he's doing. But we were even touching up on it before we recorded, Coach Poor. Again, PFF is not the end-all, be-all, but if you look at their analytical numbers, they are improving as the year goes on. The biggest improvement for me is their tackling. You go all the way back to earlier in the year around Jacksonville State. They're around 41.5% in that ball game. Just most recently, they were at 80% against Youngstown State. They tackled at an 82% clip against Illinois State. The numbers and the points may not necessarily show it, but I do think this is a Murray State team that is starting to show improvement, and they're getting better marginally here as the year's going along.
Yeah, and some of that, I mean, what are they, 60 new guys this year? In the second year, I mean, was a whole roster build his first year. But so it's hard to, small sample size of development, but you just look at them defensively. They got 3 true freshmen playing. Not that determines how good of players they are, but true freshmen in the Valley is a tough go.
Yeah.
And a couple of things that jumped out at me talking about their improvement. They're giving up 58% on third down, 95% in the red zone. So in those critical situations, that's kind of been the Achilles heel, I think, in my opinion. And then they're not really impacting offenses that much, turnover ratio, they're like -5, which that's always a struggle. I mean, and that's where you see improvement is, just like we talked about with our defense, hey, we're getting 3 and outs, at least 1 a quarter, which count as turnovers, so to speak. But yeah, and the thing about it is they're always scary because they are a Valley team. He's a really good recruiter. I mean, they've got talented guys in those spots, and being winless and on a streak, it's if you're a player, that's a hunger thing. That's a fight and scratch, and hey, it's gonna happen, and that belief, and that's kind of where they're at right now. Is like, where is that belief? Where is that trust? When's that gonna happen? And obviously down the road for us.
Yeah, I hope that's way down the road. And I think another telling sign too, from that defensive perspective, typically when a safety is your leading tackler and by a large margin, and you look at their defensive numbers this year, Dylan Rousey, who is their starting safety, is a really good safety. He has 96 tackles already on the year. The next closest is at 56. I mean, 40 more tackles than the next closest man on defense.
Yeah, those are Fabre Collins numbers, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Talking about Fabre Collins, who went in the Hall of Fame, had over 440 tackles in his Saluki career, which if you divide that by 4, you can do the math.
Yeah.
So for him as a strong safety means one of two things. He's either coming up a lot on the run, but more than likely, he's the second or third level who's making touchdown-saving tackles, 8-9 yards down the field.
Yeah, because schematically, they're a 4-3 defense. They're not one of these defenses, South Dakota State, different people we played where, that safety's down in the box a bunch, factoring into those plays. That ball's getting to third level a lot, and even second level with the linebacker who has 50 tackles.
Yes, and they only have 5 guys who have impacted a sack this year. Their leader in tackles for loss is Abdul Rahim. He's got 3 tackles for loss on the year. Marion Pons, though, does have 2 interceptions, 7 pass breakups. You look at Brian Poley as well, 8 pass breakups as well on the year. So they've had some corners that have had some success at times. Well, let's flip it to them offensively. This has been a unit at times throughout the year. They've been able to put up points, and Ogle at quarterback leads them, Mike.
Yeah, averaging about 20, just under 20 points a game, but you round it up, he's doing about 20 points a game. Ogle's completing at about 60%, which not what he would like to do, I'm sure. He's thrown way too many interceptions. He's got 12 picks on the year. So, and I didn't look to see when they came, but still 12 during the year is a lot. They've got some decent guys at running back and guys that are capable. I don't know about the offensive line and how good it is. A lot of times interceptions are from being pressured and having to throw the ball, and you don't quite there. So they're young. They're a young team, and the quarterback's dad is a coach on the team, I believe.
The OC.
Coach's son, and that generally speaks volumes about a quarterback. But this team is just struggling, as you and I was, struggling to put it all together time after time after time. They may get a drive here and there, but something always is and is probably shooting themselves in the foot along the way.
Five interceptions the last 2 weeks.
Okay.
He threw 4 against South Dakota State.
Yeah, and I think offensively they're kind of in that probing phase of like trying to find something that works and that they have some success with, and because they're running the ball wise, I think they're just a tad over 3 yards a carry, which then puts the quarterback in a lot of long yardage situations. And when you see those numbers, 8 touchdowns to 12 interceptions, I mean that's never a good mix. But I've also seen them play both running backs in the backfield at the same time. They went to we called it 20 personnel, two running backs, no tight end, 3 receivers, because the receiving crew, I mean, the one kid,
Darius
Cannon has 500 yards, has what, 52 catches,
Yes.
And then Carter has like 300 yards, and so that's a bulk of all their passing yardage on the year. And the Ogle kid does that. He can deliver the ball. He plays the position well. It's just he's been in some hard situations. I mean, obviously playing from behind and not having a strong run game to lean on, that type of thing, and that's always a tough mix to get figured out, which I'm sure they're trying to do.
Yeah, their offense only has 47 rushing attempts for first downs this year, passing 87. So they've been in third and long a lot this year where they've had to put the ball in the air. And so, again, they're a team that you don't necessarily want to be playing in game 9 of the year because you never know when they might put it all together. Yet at the same time, the Salukis are in that same mode. This is a playoff game for the Salukis. So you can't not have Murray's attention in this football game, and it's another game where you want to be ahead at halftime, 21-3, 24-3, whatever the case may be. If you can do that, to put that pressure on and kind of take the spirit out of this team, and okay, this isn't going to be our week that we get that first win.
Yeah, to Pat's point, they were down 35-7 at South Dakota at halftime. Illinois State put 21 on them in the first quarter. They have had to really, they've dug some holes deep in games, which no doubt leads to those numbers. And let's end it on the Saluki perspective. I think, Mike, you hit on it. There's a lot of bracketologists, whatever you want to say. It's now that time of year, as you get to the close of the year, where the playoff picture's starting to form. Sam Herder does a really great job. He's probably the one that I would say I trust, not probably, he is the one that I trust the most in terms of the consistency factor. Craig Haley, too, when he comes out with those 2 guys being main national guys. Right now, Southern's on the outside by many of those projections. Doesn't really mean a whole lot because right now South Dakota and Southern Illinois are probably the 2 teams that control their most destiny the rest of the year, because South Dakota, they'll host North Dakota this weekend. They host South Dakota State in the year. Southern Illinois, if South Dakota wins all 3 of those games, which granted, by the way, that's a really tall task for South Dakota to do, for anybody to do for that matter. If they do that, they're going to be clearly in. And for Southern, we talk about all the time, Coach Poor, if you take care of what you're supposed to do, you'll be fine. So you can't really get caught up in the noise, but to piggyback off of what Mike just said, Coach Poor, I mean, this is a playoff game. This is a game that you cannot afford to get beat, or for sure, regardless of what happens the rest of the year, this would be a loss that would really be a bad blemish on your resume.
Yeah, I still stand in my coaching boots, and it's about being 1-0 this week, and you can look forward a little bit, but you got to look forward to the standpoint of what it's going to be if we do 1-0 this week and 1-0 the next week. And vis-a-vis, alluding to what you're saying, these are one-game seasons. These are playoff games for us where we're perceived right now. I think the bigger piece is what we think about ourselves and know what that carrot is that's out there, but we got to do it one snap at a time, 1 week at a time, one game at a time, and good things will happen if that's the way we approach it.
Yeah, and I think the players understand that.
Absolutely.
But they're still 21, 20, 22, whatever. They're not blind. They see the record. They see all these polls. They say they're not on social media. That's a lie. They all look. They all do it. So they see where we are, where Southern is perceived at right now, and they know that a loss to Murray is probably
The
a
death
playoff killer.
Yeah.
You just can't lose to a team that's 0-8.
Yeah. Yeah, and,
expect,
that's not being disrespectful at all. It's just,
no,
that's being factual.
and expect to be considered as one of the best 24 teams in the FCS. You just can't do that. Now, from the coach speak, this is a team. This is the biggest game of the year because it's this next game. I get all that, but that's team oriented. Everyone else in the world looks at what do they need to do.
Yes.
And so that's how, I mean, and we're guilty of it as well. I mean, I appreciate that, this is the most important game of the week, but it's a must win. It's a have to win. At this point of the year, it's a have to win.
Well, you make your money, you make your hay in November. And those are always
Important
the games that count,
games.
irregardless if you're talking conference championship or you're talking playoffs, whatever. And from a coaching standpoint, looking behind the curtain is you want to be playing good football in all three phases, and the criticalness of what you're looking at is to that end, not so much how you compare to everybody else. I used to say it all the time. You got to walk the walk before you can talk the talk. You know, you got to do it, and you got to do it one snap at a time, 1 week at a time, and that's just, that's part of Nick's process. Is that's how we build great seasons, and give ourselves a chance to get in the dance and go on a run.
And he's never wavered, even from the North Dakota State to North Dakota, to tell this group, you are a good team.
Absolutely.
And I think he felt like they had to hear that again and again, because I can understand some doubt creeps in when you have two lopsided games in a row, and one that you thought, if we can get this one at home, we can beat North Dakota at home. That's a big resume builder for us,
Yes.
and it was the next game, and it just was never close. And so I can see that from the psychological standpoint for the players going, gosh, man, are we as good as he's telling us we are? And so to hear it again, and even after the Murray game with all of the mistakes that were made, Nick still says, hey, this is a really good football team that can still get better.
And it's so cool to hear you say that, because as a 20-year-old, 21-year-old, whatever player, is to hear your head coach come out and say, it is never going to be perfect, but all I'm hearing in meetings is we're striving for perfection. This has got to be better. This has got to be better. Right. And then to be told from a confidence standpoint, you are a good football team, you are a good football player, but having the understanding that, you're going to make some mistakes. It's just at this juncture, you want those eliminated. Hey, we've learned our lessons, hopefully. Here's, look back. Here's why. Here's why. When you can answer the questions, that's a huge thing. When you can point to it and go, here's why, that's a huge deal.
No question. And I guess the first day of November, our first November football game will be Saturday. It'll be November 1st. It'll be against Murray State, as it will be an important game for the Salukis, trying to keep all those things in front of them. But again, this will be 4 games left starting Saturday at Murray State. Well, our coverage will begin at 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. Kickoff will be at 4 from Murray, Kentucky. So we hope you join us then, Saluki Nation. For Jody Wright, join us on the podcast. We appreciate Coach Wright taking time. And for my partners, Mike Truth, Coach Pat Moore, I am Luke Martin saying so long. We will talk to you Saturday, Saluki Nation. Go Dogs!
This has been Saluki Royalty, the official podcast for Saluki Athletics. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review however you listen. The preceding has been a Learfield presentation on the Saluki Sports Network.